He's considered to be the oldest human mummy found intact, and scientists believe he died more than 5,000 years ago.
This is the world's first replica of Otzi the Iceman.
In the Alps, Otzi the Iceman had been frozen in time for thousands of years, but a revolution is happening beneath the icy surface of this 1,000-year-old body. Thanks to cutting-edge science and the power of DNA, his frozen body is revealing secrets that are rewriting history books and leaving scientists completely confused. What secrets did Otzi's DNA reveal? Because of new DNA technology, they're reimagining what he actually looked like. And how will these revelations change our understanding of human history? Join us on this exciting adventure as ancient DNA reveals Otzi scientists are shocked by what they've learned about the Iceman. Find out. The Iceman, a natural mummy found in the Ötztal Alps, which are on the border between Austria and Italy, is a famous figure. He is one of the oldest mummies ever found in Europe. His nickname comes from the area where he was discovered. His findings unfolded in a crisp. On September 14, 1991, two German travelers, Helm and Erika Simon, found him high in the Ural Alps, between Austria and Italy, at an amazing 3,120 meters on the east ridge of the Fallspitze. At first glance, they thought they saw a recently deceased fellow mountaineer, but little did they know they had found an ancient marvel frozen in time. The next day, a brave mountaineer and the keeper of the nearby Similan Huta went to the scene to retrieve the body, but severe weather stopped them. Legendary mountain climbers like Hans Discovery became very interested in the amazing discovery after it spread like wildfire. Results: Kanda and Reinhold Messner. The remote site quickly became a hub for curious explorers and students eager to solve the mysteries of UT's long history. The body of UT was carefully removed from its icy tomb on September 22nd, and the following day it was brought to the office of the medical examiner in Innsbruck, along with various objects discovered nearby. Archaeologist Konrad Spindler from the University of Innsbruck took charge of examining the find on September 24th, based on the type of excess found alongside UT. Spindler thought the find had been made at least 4,000 years ago. Numerous science institutions conducted additional tests on tissue samples from the body and related materials. The conclusive results astonished the world. Otzi had lived between 359 and 3501 BC, nearly 5,000 years ago. Looking at Otzi's anatomy, the mummy of Otzi has received a thorough examination, including measurements, X-rays, and dating techniques. According to the latest findings, Otzi stood at about 160 meters tall, weighed approximately 50 kilos, and was around 45 years old when he died. Initially, when discovered, his body weighed about 13.75 kilos because it was preserved in ice shortly after his death, which slowed down its decay process. Initial reports suggested that parts of his genitalia were missing, but further investigation proved this claim. Studies on pollen dust grains and the isotopic composition of his tooth enamel suggest that Otzi spent his early years near the present-day village of Feldherns in South Tyrol, north of Bolzano. However, later in life, he moved to valleys approximately 50 kilometers farther north. A computerized tomography, CT, scan revealed an unusual positioning of his stomach, which had moved upward to where his lower lung area would typically be located. An examination of the stomach contents revealed partially digested IEX meat, which was confirmed through DNA analysis. This suggests that Otzi had consumed a meal less than 2 hours before his death. Additionally, wheat grains were detected in his stomach. It's thought that Otzi's last meal likely consisted of dried fatty meat from a wild goat native to South Tyrol, Italy. Further analysis of Otzi's intestinal contents suggested 2 previous meals. One comprised show meat, while the other included red deer meat and herb bread, both accompanied by roots and fruits. The grain found with these meals was recognized as highly processed Inkinan corn wheat brand. Possibly in the form of bread near body remnants of his provisions were found, including chaff and grains of corn and barley, flax and poppy seeds, as well as kernels of sloes and various wild berries. Hair analysis was used to check what he ate a few months back. The pollen found in his first meal suggests he dined in a forest with tall trees, and other pollen hints at him eating wheat and beans, possibly grown by people. There were also tiny grains from a hop hornbeam tree. The pollen was really well kept, showing it was fresh, maybe only about 2 hours old when he died. Putting the time around spring or early summer in corn wheat is usually harvested in late summer and sloes in fall, so they must have been saved from the year before. S. hair contained high amounts of both copper particles and arsenic. This, along with his super pure copper axe, suggests he might have worked in copper smelting. Scientists also looked at the sizes of his leg bones and hips. They think Otzi spent a lot of time walking over hilly places. This much moving around was unusual for people in the Copper Age. It could mean he was a shepherd who led animals in top high places with fancy 3D scanning tech. The South Terro Museum of Archaeology in Italy made a copy of Otzi's face. It makes him seem older than his 45 years, with deep brown eyes, a beard, and a wrinkled face. He looks tired and not very neat. The old ice mummy had a nasty stomach bug called whipworm. Imagine tiny worms in his intestines causing him pain. When experts looked at CT scans, they saw that a few of his ribs on the right side were cracked, possibly from him lying face down after he died or from the weight of the ice crushing his body. It's like finding clues from a CSI show. One of his fingernails had strange lines called Bow's lines, suggesting he got sick 3 times in 6 months before he passed away. The last time, about 2 months before his death, he felt unwell for 2 weeks. Plus his skin was missing its outer layer, which is standard when you're preserved in ice like he was. Otzi's teeth were in terrible shape, possibly because he ate a lot of grains and carbs. DNA tests showed that he was lactose intolerant, showing that even back then some people couldn't eat milk. When doctors looked into his lungs with a special tool, they found them covered with soot. This suggests he spent a lot of time near fires, staying warm and cooking his meals. Imagine what his daily life was like thousands of years ago. Decoding the tattoos and old tattoo stories. Otzi had a huge total of 61 tattoos. Picture it like ancient body art. These tattoos were made up of 19 sets of black lines ranging in width from super thin to about the size of a grain of rice, and in length from tiny to as long as your finger. They weren't random either. Some formed lines running up and down his body, while others made shapes like crosses behind his knee and on his ankle, and lines ringing his wrist. The real tattoo party was on his legs, where he had 12 sets of lines. When scientists took a closer look at the tattoos, they found something interesting. The ink wasn't fancy stuff from a shop. It was made from fireplace ash or soot. It's like he was getting tattooed with old DIY ink, and they didn't just slap it on like a modern tattoo. No, they made small cuts or poked tiny holes in his skin, then rubbed the ink in. Some experts think he got tattoo touch-ups because most of them were really dark. It's like he had his own old tattoo artist giving him fresh ink regularly. When doctors looked at his bones using special machines, they found signs of wear and tear, kind of like when your best shoes start to get old and worn out. These signs were mostly in places where he had tattoos, like his lower back and knees. It's like his body was telling a story. Some experts think these tattoos weren't just for looks. They might have been a way to help with pain, sort of like old pain relief methods you hear about today, like acupuncture or acupressure. Interestingly, they lived way before those methods were known in China, where people usually think they started. It's like he was ahead of his time. Think about it. 9 out of his 19 tattoo groups were right on spots where people today stick needles for acupuncture, and most of the others were on lines in the body that are important in acupuncture too. It's like his scars were a secret map of his body's pain points. Maybe those tattoos on his stomach even helped with the tummy problems from his nasty stomach bug. It's like it was his own old doctor using tattoos to heal himself. As tattoos weren't easy to spot at first. They were hiding in plain sight because they were so faint. but smart researchers used fancy cameras that can see different kinds of light that our eyes can't. But in 2023, they went even further, creating a super detailed version of his genetic code with way less modern human stuff mixed in, according to findings. As Y chromosome DNA puts him in a special group called GL-L91, which is linked to a place called South Corsica. Today, his mitochondrial DNA, which comes from the maternal line, put him in a group called K1, but he didn't fit neatly into any of its subgroups, so they made a new subgroup just for him, calling it K10 after Uti himself. It is tree. His ancestors were mostly Turkish farmers, more than any other group in Europe at the time, but some were even hunters. Surprisingly, they didn't find any traces of a group called the steppe herders, who came later. It's like their genes are rewriting history books. It seems like ancestors were still mixing and mingling genetically when he was alive, with farmers from Turkey and hunters from Europe came together, and by looking at his genes, scientists could even guess what he looked like. They think he probably had darker skin than people in Europe today, but not as dark as ancient hunters. He might have also dealt with hair loss and could have been prone to weight-related health issues like obesity. It's like a peek into his mirror, showing us what he might have looked like thousands of years ago. Scientists looked at the DNA of over 3,700 men from Trell and found that 19 of them, which is a tiny percentage, shared the same ancient family line as Uti. It's like finding a bunch of living relatives who are connected to someone who lived over 5,000 years ago. Imagine the stories they could share about their shared ancestor. It's like a real-life family reunion spanning thousands of years, ancient and dried fungus. The shoes Uti wore have been remade by a Czech scholar. They're pretty complicated, which makes the scholar think that even way back then, around 5,300 years ago, there were people who made shoes for others. These remade shoes are so good that a Czech company wanted to buy the rights to sell them. There's a new idea from British archaeologist Jackie Wood. She thinks his shoes were actually like the top part of snowshoes. According to her theory, the thing we thought was part of his backpack is actually the frame and netting of one snowshoe with animal hide to cover the foot, the leather loincloth, and the hide coat. Oti wore was crafted from sheepskin through genetic analysis. It was revealed that the sheep used were closer to modern European domestic sheep than wild ones. These items were actually made from the skins of at least 4 sheep. Interestingly, part of the coat was fashioned from domesticated goat skin belonging to a mitochondrial haplogroup, a common female ancestor found in Central Europe today. The coat itself was a patchwork of hides from several animals of 2 different species skillfully stitched together. Additionally, Otzi leggings were also made from domesticated goat leather. It's fascinating to note that a similar set of leggings dating back 5,000 years and discovered in Schneid, Switzerland, were also made from goat leather. Researchers from Ireland and Italy analyzed the mitochondrial DNA from 6 pieces of clothing and shared their discoveries in the journal Scientific Reports. Their findings revealed that the shoelaces were crafted from European cattle. The quiver, they suggested Oti might have died at a lower altitude and then been buried higher up in the mountains. Their study centered on the objects found near Uti and their positions. They suggested that he might have been placed above what seemed to be a stone burial mound. However, over time, with each thaw cycle, water flowing down the mountain could have moved his body before it refroze, while a root, Klaus Ohl, agrees that this natural process could have caused Ez's body to move. He claims that there's no solid evidence to prove the scattered stones formed a burial platform. Anthropologist Albert Zink adds another perspective, saying that his bones show no signs of dislocation that would occur if he slid downhill. Additionally, the blood clots in his arrow wound are intact, suggesting his body wasn't moved up the mountain after death, regardless of where he was buried. The idea doesn't change the likelihood that Uti met a violent end. Now it's time for today's subscriber pick. In the shadowy depths of a hidden laboratory, a team of scientists huddles around a glowing screen, their eyes wide with anticipation. The air crackles with electricity as they delve into the ancient mysteries locked within the DNA of Otzi the Iceman, a relic of a bygone age. As the sequencer hums to life, old DNA reveals Oi. The Iceman's alpine secrets was a one-time find. While there aren't any other finds as dramatic as UT, there have been some significant artifacts found in similar high-altitude alpine areas going back to the same period. These finds include items like axes, daggers, and arrowheads. Some experts say these items might have been lost by travelers or shepherds passing through, or they could have been part of hidden stashes. However, there's another high-altitude alpine pass called the Schneid that shares similarities with its discovery site. Here, researchers have found pieces of clothing, a wooden bow, a quiver with arrows, and shoe fragments. Radiocarbon dating puts these items between the early 3rd millennium and the 2nd millennium BCE. Although no bodies have been found, these discoveries hint at the chance of collapsed graves similar to where it was found, suggesting that his case might not be as isolated as once thought. Even in the stories passed down through alpine folklore, there's a hint of truth about how bodies and burials from the Copper and Bronze Ages could be preserved by ice and gradually revealed as the temperature became milder. One such legend, recorded in 1862 by a historian, likely represents the sighting of bronze burials in high-altitude areas. In those times, the dead were often buried with long copper pins as part. If you enjoy this story, please do not forget to subscribe to The Past Whisper and hit the bell icon for interesting story drama.